And from there, man, right after your inspections are completed, like I said, within the first 17 days, you and your realtor, you guys going to meet or talk and discuss basically the reports that you get and to see what the main concerns of the house is, you know. So you guys will get together, create a list of items that you're going to request the seller to probably fix. So this stage is, I like to call it the second round of negotiations per se, because what you're doing is after your inspections, you're presenting the seller all the items that you feel that you would like the seller to fix, give you a credit for, or reduce the purchase price to a certain amount. So it's basically whatever you guys can kind of come to terms with and agree on. But that is like kind of the second round of negotiations. And once you get past that point, then it's kind of downhill, I would say, except for the appraisal. They have the appraisal, though. That's the next step as well. So let me get into this. Let me show you another slide real quick. But yeah, like I said, you'll present what is called a request for repairs right after all your inspections are completed on the home. And right during that within the first 2 weeks, the loan officer is going to order an appraisal for the house, an appraiser to come to the house and to pretty much make sure it's worth what the price that you offered, and you know, the price that the house you offered it for. So say the house was the house is $250,000 and you're in escrow at $250,000. An appraiser's job is to go out, look at the home, just to make sure it compares equally to the other homes similar that sold for around the same purchase price, to make sure that it's the right value. Now, at any time the appraisal, they feel like the value is not what you're in contract with, then because the bank is only going to loan you whatever the appraised value of the home is. So say you're in contract for $250,000, the appraiser goes to the home, do their appraisal, and then they come back and report that actually the value is really $245,000. So now the bank or lender, they're only going to loan that amount, $245,000. So basically you have to go back to the seller and just they'll know anyway. Your agent will talk to the other agent to see if he can just sell it at $245,000, the true value of the home from there. That way you're not overpaying for a house. You know that the value is the value. And sometimes, you know, there's some negotiating going on then. If you got a really hard-nosed seller who wants to stick with his price, $250,000, this is when you got to have a really good realtor, and hopefully they can negotiate really well on your behalf, and make sure that, you know, that the sale or it doesn't fall through or not work over that $5,000 amount, to where you guys can come to terms. If you have to meet in the middle, that's something you have to discuss. But ultimately, if anything over $245,000 is going to come out of your pocket as a buyer, just keep in mind. So the lender is only going to loan the appraised value. Anything over that is going to come out of your pocket. So just if you really want the home and the seller is really not budging, hopefully you have extra funds or finances somewhere, or you can borrow to cover the difference of the appraised value. So here's a little picture of appraiser going out.
I was going to say,
go ahead, Mario.
So, and that does only apply to a loan. If you're doing a cash deal, you don't need the appraisal, right?
Exactly.
It's like the wild, wild west, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very good point, Mario. Yeah. So he was saying, basically, yeah, you don't really need an appraisal if you're paying cash. So cash you can kind of avoid certain things like that. Let's see. Anyone else? You guys that are on, feel free to type in any of your questions you have right in the chat box. We're happy to answer them as we go on. We're kind of approaching towards the end of the buying process. So we started with the pre-approval, to the home search, looking for the home, to the offer, making your offer acceptance. We talked about the earnest money deposit, upon acceptance, the small little bit of money that will go towards closing. We've talked about home inspections and how important that is, and the appraisal. Actually, Tristan, you could probably chime in a little bit about the appraisal, because that is another expense on the buyer that some may not be aware of.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's the only fee with the lender that you usually pay up front. So they're about $500 for a standard appraisal, conventional or FHA. VA appraisals run about $600. VA appraisals, you'll normally pay those at the end of the transaction through the closing costs, but FHA conventional, just be prepared to pay those up front, right? And those come off your closing costs, right? So if we do disclose a $500 appraisal fee, once you pay for it, it'll come off your closing costs. So yeah, that's the only fee you really have to pay with a lender up front. And then I know on the realtor side, you know, there can be some inspections and things like that can also they also have to pay for it at some point. So
gotcha. Awesome. Good. So basically, oh, go ahead. Oh, I think we have a question. Okay, well, I might as well, maybe you can answer this, Tristan. What will happen if the appraised value is not enough? Okay, I think I kind of touched on that. Yeah, if the appraised value is not enough, pretty much what I kind of, did you?
Yeah, if the appraised value is not enough from a lending point of view, and also real estate point of view, I mean, it's open to negotiation, right? Obviously, the sellers, if they agree, they could come down to the appraised value, but if they don't, then you know there has to be more. There can be more negotiations, but ultimately, if there is no negotiation or they can't come to an agreement, then the buyer would have to come in with the money, right? The extra money that it would take to close the transaction. Now, you know, the buyer, if the appraisal comes in low, the buyer is well within their right to walk away from the transaction, try to buy another house. So yeah, it's sort of part of that. So everything's sort of off the table at that point, and the negotiations can start.
And you get your deposit back too, right, Tristan?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, and that goes for anything with the transaction, you know, within the contingency period, right? As you guys know, you know, if Carlos goes out, the home inspector, and he finds out that there's a massive plumbing issue or something like that, that's, you know, $20,000 fix, and basically, you know, no one would want to buy this house, then that's definitely grounds for canceling the transaction, and the buyer would get their deposit back. That's correct.
Sure. And I'm glad you guys touched on that, because I really didn't cover the actual contingency. So I'll cover that, contingencies and how that works, for those that don't know. So like I had mentioned, you know, you got the first 17 days to do all your inspections. After that's over with and you guys, you know, come to an agreement, and everything looks good and you're happy with everything, we move on to the next phase. But before you do that, what you will have to do is remove what is called contingencies, the buyer inspection contingency. So basically, this is just signing off saying we inspected the home, we still love the home, it's still going to work, we're ready to move forward to the next step. And so once you sign the contingency removal, basically you can't go back and use that as a reason that you don't want to say. After you can't come back and say, oh, well, we don't want the house because we don't like it, or there's some issues with it, because you've already passed that point per se. So after the 17 days, that's why you get so much time to review the disclosures, which will be sent from the seller. So the seller will send you basically forms letting you know what they know about the home, you know, whether they made repairs, any issues with the house. As far as they know, they're going to send you information for you to review. But again, after you have that time within the 17 days to review the paperwork and to do all your inspections and to decide if the house is going to be right for you. Once you remove the contingencies, we go on to the loan and appraisal contingency. So once the appraised value comes in, say it appraises at the right price, and we have to wait for the loan approval. Once we get loan approval, Tristan's like, hey, yeah, the loan is finally approved, you're good to go. Then that's when we'll sign off and remove the loan and appraisal contingency. And once we do that, that's saying you're going full steam ahead, you're not backing down, you're pretty much locked into the home at that point, per se. The only thing is, once you sign off the contingencies at both times, so you done the buyer's inspection contingency, signed off, go to the loan and appraisal. Once that's approved, you sign off on that. Now, if you decide last minute to back out, you're like, I just don't want to buy the house anymore. You could be very at risk of losing your earnest money deposit, your initial deposit, like we talked about, like the $1,500 amount we said. you could potentially lose that once you've signed off on all your contingencies. So just make sure you have a good communication with the realtor. I'm sure they will definitely keep you in the loop of the contingency time frames, because those are very important, and you don't want to lose your initial deposit at all. That's anything you want to do.
No,
Okay.
that's perfect.
But yeah, so just keep that in mind. Those are two key points. So after the loan and appraisal contingencies removed, we're looking towards closing. Pretty much we're going to the final stages.